Living in Ravenhollow means everybody knows your business before you do. That's just how small towns work. But when people started vanishing last April, the whispers changed. They weren't the usual gossip. Something was happening at Thornfield Estate, and I was the only one who could handle it. I should probably explain what I do. I'm not your typical hunter. I don't track deer or go after wild turkeys. I hunt things most people pretend don't exist, things that lurk in shadows and feed on fear. I got into this line of work because of my grandfather. He showed me everything: how to craft protective amulets, mix remedies from herbs that grow only under moonlight, and how to recognize signs most people miss. The knife I carry was his, etched with symbols that can hurt things bullets can't touch. Thornfield Estate used to be our town's pride. The Harrington family built it back in the 1800s, and for generations, they were the pillars of our community. When Eleanor Harrington died in January, the estate should have passed to some distant cousin. Instead, it just changed. The elegant gardens withered overnight. Windows would appear broken, then fixed the next day, then broken again. At first, people blamed teenagers or squatters. Then Mia Carson didn't come home from her evening jog. 2 days later, Doug Wilson vanished while walking his dog. By the end of the month, 5 more were gone. The police set up roadblocks and brought in dogs. They found nothing. No trail, no evidence, no bodies. But I knew. I could feel it every time I drove past those iron gates. I remember the night I finally went in. It was a Thursday. The forecast called for heavy rain, but what was brewing wasn't natural. The clouds hung too low, circling above the estate like vultures. The darkness around Thornfield wasn't just the absence of light, it was something physical, something hungry. I parked half a mile away and walked the rest. No point announcing my arrival. The gate wasn't locked. Of course not. It swung open at my touch, metal cold as ice despite the warm spring night. The gravel driveway had been immaculate once, but now it was overrun with weeds that seemed to twist away from my footsteps. Let me tell you, I've dealt with some nasty things over the years. Vengeful spirits in abandoned hospitals. A nest of skinwalkers in Arizona. Once, a thing that called itself an angel, but definitely wasn't. Nothing prepared me for what waited in Thornfield. The mansion's front door was ajar, swaying slightly in wind that didn't touch the dead trees surrounding it. I slipped my grandfather's knife from its sheath and stepped inside. The foyer stank of rot and something else, something metallic and ancient. Moonlight filtered through dirty windows, revealing what had once been beautiful parquet flooring, now warped and stained. I heard it before I saw it, a wet sliding sound from the grand staircase. Not footsteps, more like something heavy being dragged across marble. "I know you're there," I called out, my voice sounding thin in that cavernous space. "The people you took, they have families, they have lives." The laugh that answered me didn't come from the stairs. It came from everywhere at once, resonating from the walls themselves. Deep and guttural, yet somehow feminine. "Hunter," it purred. The word felt like oil on my skin. "Little hunter with your little knife. The others brought guns. Do you think you'll fare better?" Others? So I wasn't the first to come looking. That explained why no one had raised alarms about the missing search parties. Then it appeared at the top of the stairs. If I tried to draw it, you'd think I was insane. It had a woman's shape, sort of, but elongated, with joints that bent in impossible ways. Its skin was the iridescent black of an oil slick, and what should have been a face was just a mouth filled with needle-like teeth arranged in concentric circles. My grandfather called these things void parasites. They come from somewhere else, somewhere beyond, and they feed on more than just flesh. They consume what makes us human: memories, desires, and fears. It moved down the stairs in a lurching, liquid motion. My training kicked in. I threw the first vial of blessed salt, watching it sizzle against that oil-slick skin. The creature hissed, rearing back. I used that moment to duck behind a rotting chaise lounge, already reaching for my second weapon, a silver bell whose ring could disrupt its connection to our world. But I wasn't fast enough. It moved like nothing bound by physics should move, suddenly beside me, its mouth face inches from mine. The stench was overwhelming, like meat left too long in the summer heat. "I've tasted police officers, hunters, curious teenagers," it whispered. "But you taste of old power. Your fear is exquisite." Its touch was ice on my arm, numbing, spreading. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. At that moment, I understood why the victims never screamed. The paralysis was immediate. But the thing about family traditions, they run deep. While this thing was savoring its moment, the protective sigils my grandfather had tattooed between my shoulder blades years ago began to burn. Not painfully, but with purpose. That burning sensation jolted me back to myself just enough. I didn't have room to swing the knife, but I didn't need to. I drove it straight up into what passed for the creature's throat, twisting it the way my grandfather had shown me 1,000 times. What happened next still haunts me. The thing didn't die, not right away. It screamed, a sound that existed somewhere between frequencies, like hearing a dog whistle you shouldn't be able to perceive. The walls of Thornfield rippled, reality thinned. For just a second, I saw elsewhere, a vast darkness filled with writhing shapes, eyes that had never seen light, hunger that had never known satiation. The creature collapsed into itself, folding inward like paper being crumpled, until nothing remained but a stain on the floor that seemed to move if you looked at it directly. I stumbled backward, my legs finally giving out. The knife in my hand was no longer silver but black as if charred. I knew instinctively I'd never use it again. Some tools, once they've touched certain things, are forever changed. Dawn broke as I made my way out of Thornfield. My clothes were torn, and my body was covered in cuts I didn't remember receiving. But I was alive. More than that, I was certain. The missing people were gone. Really gone. Whatever that thing was, it had consumed them completely. There would be no bodies for their families to bury. No closure for parents who would spend decades jumping at every phone call hoping. As I reached my car, something made me turn back. Thornfield looked different in the morning light. Just an old, decaying mansion. But on the rooftop stood a figure. A woman in clothes from another century. Her face serene as she watched me. Eleanor Harrington, I presumed. Her form flickered once, twice, and then she was gone. I never told the police what I found. What would I say? Instead, I told them to check the old well on the property's edge. I knew they'd find evidence there, enough to close the case, if not explain it. Sometimes that's the best we can do, and I still hunt. My arm never fully recovered. There's a patch of skin that remains numb, a perfect handprint where that thing touched me. On cold nights it aches, a reminder of what's out there. Sometimes I spot Eleanor watching me from reflections or shadowy corners. She never speaks, but her presence feels like a warning. Or maybe gratitude, hard to tell with ghosts. You might think I'm making this up, most would, but next time you drive past an abandoned house that makes you shiver for no reason, or feel eyes on you in an empty room, remember there are people like me out there. Regular people who carry weird knives and no old words, not because we're special, but because somebody's got to do it.